Hello and welcome to Saving Lives in Slow Motion. Today, I'd like to talk about kindness. Be kind. Be kind. We hear it all the time. We see it all the time. I think most of us know what kindness is and what it means. But is there any science behind it? And what is the psychology behind it? That's what I want to look at today. Now, frankly, since COVID hit the planet, it's been difficult to be kind. People are scared. People are more angry, more anxious, understandably so. And I do notice this in society. I don't know whether you do. People have fundamentally changed. Something has snapped. And I thought it'd be a good time to explore this because instinctively we know that kindness is a good thing. And it's linked, I like making links between things, to gratitude, to happiness, to well-being, all of those slightly fluffy things that don't seem that scientific, but are really important to the human condition. So recently my wife and I went somewhere locally just to get away from the kids so that we could talk and kind of catch up really on a load of stuff that we needed to talk about. Boring kind of stuff that you just don't get time to do. Dull but important, I say. Anyway, where we went, we were served by someone who appeared to be really quite rude and was anything but kind. And I think many years ago I would have taken this really badly and possibly even said something to them because I would have immediately assumed it was something to do with me or us, rather than thinking, do you know what, she may just be having a bad day, she may have low self-esteem, she may be feeling anxious, she may just be a shy person. But it would have bothered me all night 20 years ago. But I was a different person then. And as the evening went on and we had more interactions with this person, I realised actually that she was probably very anxious and stressed. I don't know why, not my business. And actually by being kind to her, she sort of warmed up, if you like. Anyway, I don't know why I'm boring you with that anecdote. It's just something that was in my mind. But if we think about kindness as a concept, who does it benefit? Is it benefiting the person being kind or the person who's receiving the kindness? That's probably where I want to start. And from what I've read, the answer is a bit of both. It benefits both parties. That is, unless the balance is tipped. If you're someone who's constantly giving and being kind, the reasons behind that can be innumerate, Sometimes it's because you're a people pleaser. Sometimes it's just because, in a way, giving, if you like, is quite selfish, isn't it? Because you get something out of it because people like you more or whatever. But as long as it's not totally one-sided, because kindness involves giving something, doesn't it? Not necessarily a material thing, but you're giving a particular energy to someone. The psychological research shows that both parties benefit. And again, there'll be links in the show notes that you can look at. So I want to just start with a paper about kindness and benefits in terms of stress reduction. And this will be in the show notes. But I love the beginning of this because it's an anecdote about a 19-year-old man who was jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge, attempted suicide, and when he thought about what would stop him from jumping, he said, and I quote, "All I wanted is for someone to see my pain and say something kind." Now that really resonates with me because in general practice, there is this phenomenon called the drug doctor, or the doctor as a drug. It's poorly understood and it's not really the same as placebo, but the example is, you go to a home visit or you see a patient and you don't actually sort of give them a prescription or a drug or a treatment. You literally listen and give them compassion, if you like. and something happens where the person feels better or gets better. This is what this paper kind of touches on. It's about showing concern and caring. That's what we want. We want someone to take an interest and care about us and our feelings. And if you look at the flip side, this is what I find fascinating and slightly irritating about science and medicine. We know that if you're, suffering verbal abuse or emotional abuse or being bullied, for example, that has bad effects on us. It creates stress and it essentially makes us ill. So, of course, the opposite would make us feel better, or not make us well necessarily, but would benefit our health. Yet I don't feel it's always valued enough. And when you think about the word kindness, it can mean lots of things. I mean, recently our kettle started to leak, and I got in touch with the company that made it, and they sent me a new one. Now that was kind, definitely, but I'm not talking about that sort of kindness. This kind of kindness is about connection. And physiologically, scientifically, how that works is that whenever we perform an act of kindness or receive an act of kindness, you start to secrete all sorts of chemicals and hormones like dopamine, oxytocin, something called substance P. And essentially what they all do is not only do they make you feel good, but they can have other physiological benefits, like a reduction in pain, for example. And the more we do it, the more we secrete these chemicals and hormones. Now, there's one big exception to this, and that is people who are faking it. So I used to work with someone who would always trot out that be kind motto, but actually themselves were anything but kind, actually really quite malicious. And if you're doing the kindness thing for attention seeking or for your own gain, it's not going to work. Yes, admittedly, some part of kindness is slightly selfish, there's no doubt. But if you're doing it to be lauded by others, forget about it, because that will out eventually and the wheels will come off. So just, for clarification, there are benefits, which again you can see in the show notes, on mental health, physical health, and also our behaviours as well with kindness. What about the downsides? Are there any downsides to kindness? There's downsides to everything, aren't there? Well, on a personal level, there are some obvious ones. One is that you could be seen as being too nice, and then people will take advantage of someone who's persistently kind. And the second is that you may actually just attract people who will drain you. And that is really difficult because you're someone who may be vulnerable to being controlled by others. Another one is that, and I've seen this myself, where I've tried to do something nice for someone and then suddenly they don't trust you because they think, hang on, what's in it for you? This whole kind of, there's no such thing as a free lunch. But hey, that's, the problem of both parties there, because one side's probably being a little bit too kind and the other's being a bit too suspicious. And sometimes it's not just suspicious, it's actually, I remember this time I was at a really good friend's wedding back in 2006 or 7, I think it would have been. And anyway, there were these canapes, and the waiting staff were bringing around these platters, and on one of them anyway, were these tiny little cocktail sausages covered in sesame seeds. And I was standing with a group of friends, and I basically love those mini sausages. I don't really eat them anymore, but I did at the time. And I remember when it came over, I was like, oh, I love these. These are just my favourite thing. And I picked one up, with a cocktail stick. And I was standing next to a guy who I don't know very well. He's sort of married to someone I went to med school with. And he just said, he goes, why are you talking about it like it's caviar or something? It's just a sausage. And it was interesting because I wasn't trying to be kind. I was just sort of, I don't know, voicing my excitement at the fact that I like these things. And then he seemed to be quite unkind, but I don't think he would have seen it like that. He's trying to be sort of factual. But anyway, this is what I mean. Kindness is what you make it in some way. And, I remember sort of snapping back going, well, actually, I prefer this to caviar. But anyway, what about being cruel to be kind? That's just a turn of phrase, isn't it? Now, obviously, it's not right to be cruel, but I think being pragmatic really has some benefits. And examples of being cruel to be kind, which ends up being kind in, that interpersonal way, is where someone's a bit reluctant to do something for their own good, and you gently nudge them in that direction. And in a way, the modern version of being cruel to be kind is probably coaching or skills coaching, or encouraging someone to try something that's slightly out of their comfort zone. And there's a real skill to that, because sometimes that can come across as being slightly pushy. And often you'll find this when people leave school, they look back and think, do you know what, actually I had a brilliant teacher. If it wasn't for Mr. or Miss or Mrs. X, then, I'd never have got through my exams and I wouldn't be where I am today. Now, you often read articles about this ripple effect about kindness spreading through the world, kindness begets kindness. I think that's absolutely right and true. What I'm really interested in is organisations, and I think, for example, where I work, we are kind, genuinely, and people treat each other with respect, and it's a comfortable environment to work in. And I really do think that compassionate leadership, kindness in leadership, and particularly if you're an employer, is really important. How you do that is all to do with the culture of your organisation and values. And I've mentioned this before, but often when we're interviewing people, we're more fussed about whether this person's going to fit in with those values. They may look amazing on paper, but if they have, slightly toxic behaviours or traits, then not interested, however high a performer you might be. So that was just a really quick tour of kindness. There are lots of links in the show notes, and I don't go deep into everything because I like opening the door to these things, and then you can read a bit more about them. I do think kindness is important, and it's something that shouldn't just be about ticking a box. I do sometimes see people forcing themselves to appear kind, and I think, wow, that's just manufactured, isn't it? But at least it's better than not doing it, I guess. And there's got to be something in the fabric of society that just naturally makes us behave like that. I can hear the voice of one of my friends going, oh, well, what about the animal kingdom? That's hardly kind, when a cheetah's chasing down an antelope or something. But that's survival and competition, and maybe we'll do a different episode on those topics. And, in terms of quotes, the one that really rings true for me here on kindness, and it's because I've heard it so many times being said to me and others, particularly when someone's saying goodbye, is by Maya Angelou. What a lady she was. Most of you will have heard this before, but I just love this. And if you hold in your mind kindness, I think this really rings true. At the end of the day, people won't remember what you said or did. They will remember how you made them feel. And I think that is just a great way to sum up kindness. Okay, I'll be with you again very soon. I hope you enjoyed that. In the meantime, do stay well, take care, look after yourself, and, dare I say it, be kind. Bye for now.